First Nations will take advantage of this, Mr. Speaker. And I think that it's a very prominent part of the throne speech this year. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the highways are important to Saskatchewan and they're an important part of our infrastructure. We realize that there's more that needs to be done on highways. We all travel the same highways, Mr. Speaker, but we're working hard to fulfill a gap that was in the highways for 16 years where no money was put into it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, healthcare is one of the most important things and important priorities our government has placed. It's a huge budget item, Mr. Speaker, and we realize that the health care of our seniors is vitally important. They're the people that built this province, and we're working hard to shorten the gap that is there in long-term care, Mr. Speaker. I think that it's very ideological. I don't want to throw that word out too much, but I think to believe that anyone wants to see poor senior care in this province is ridiculous. For them to say we're letting seniors go by the wayside, it's not true. They're an important priority to this government, and we're going to work hard to ensure that the seniors' care keeps on improving under a Saskatchewan Party government. We're going to work hard to ensure that there's more beds available. I know that there's an analysis being done in RQHR with long-term care to see exactly what the needs will be in the future, because I remember a member from Lakeview saying that just follow the plans they set out and it'll be okay. Well, you can't follow those plans, Mr. Speaker, because their population numbers were not even close to what they are today. So their plan really is null and void at this point in time, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about education, Mr. Speaker. I had the opportunity, and I know members across the way aren't going to believe this, but I have some friends that are teachers, so every now and then we get together and have lunch and talk about how they would like to see the education sector move forward as a whole, Mr. Speaker. And talking with them, there's a few things that they would like to see. The investments, we have more capital investments in the education sector than the former NDP government did in 16 years, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 7 years, our government has spent more than $700 million on education infrastructure. That's a 268% increase from what was done before. And I remember when as a young guy, when I was going to school in Waldeck, I went to school there from K to 9, and I remember walking around the buckets when the rain was coming down, going to change the buckets because there's so much water being dripped in them that you had to really couldn't get a whole class done before you had to go and pour the buckets out. And these are things that we're working on, trying to improve quality infrastructure for our young people, because I think the cornerstone of education is our wonderful teachers, but also the infrastructure in which they have to go to school each and every day to learn it. They have to have a great learning environment, Mr. Speaker. As a young person, as a young family, my son at 3 years now, that kind of flew by, he's going to be starting education. So I do have some very, very interesting. I do have interest in the education sector, and like I said, when I was speaking with a couple teacher friends of mine, they were talking about the direction the education is going in Saskatchewan. And for the most part, Mr. Speaker, they said the direction is right. They're happy with the way it's going. All they need to do is have a bit more communication. And I credit the current Minister for Education, the member from Saskatoon Southeast, because he's communication with the education sector. He's communicating clearly with them, and they're happy with how that communication has been going. So, Mr. Speaker, moving on to post-secondary education. I'm a U of R alumni. My colleague from Saskatoon Northeast is the current Minister for Post-Secondary Education, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. I believe the University of Regina is at an all-time high for enrollments. I go and attend as many events as I can at the University of Regina. University of Saskatoon, how's their enrollment?
It's up. We're up again. Good MLA.
Up again? The University of Saskatchewan, sorry, I should be corrected there. The House Leader said it was the University of Saskatchewan, right? It is a friendly rivalry here, Mr. Speaker.
Go Huskies.
So, So, Mr. Speaker, I talked about the graduate retention program already, and over $130 million in rebates have been provided to more than 50,000 students. And those 50,000 students all chose to stay right here in Saskatchewan to start their careers. Talking about the University of Regina and University of Saskatchewan, they are two of our wonderful jewels in the post-secondary education, but also there's the regional colleges, SIIT, the Gabriel Dumont Institute, and all post-secondary institutions that help to ensure that First Nations and Métis students have the supports they require to do their studies as well. Mr. Speaker, in post-secondary education, Aboriginal enrollment is ever increasing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, which I think is very important to close that education gap, which we've talked about it many times, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Ministry of Advanced Education will work with SaskTel to upgrade internet access and speed at regional colleges, which again is talking about infrastructure to ensuring that students have the best opportunity to be successful in their studies.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, there's a few more things I'd like to get on the record, and one would be our support for communities. As a result of the province's predictable and sustainable revenue sharing program, municipalities already know they will receive record revenue sharing for $265 million in next year's budgets, which is more than double the amount from when we took over. See, there's a few more differences that we'll have between us and the opposition, looking back and looking forward. Looking forward, Mr. Speaker, they're able to rely on a reliable revenue sharing formula. So they know how much money they're going to get, which allows them to be able to budget more clearly. On the other side, I think when they were in power, they clawed back money. I think they clawed back about $600 million from municipalities over their tenure in government, Mr. Speaker. And so far, Mr. Speaker, I've covered many of the areas that we find as a priority in the speech from the throne. There's a couple more things I'd like to talk about, and one is the difference between leadership. They talk about, they call the Premier poster boy, which is interesting. I think what they should realize is that when you're proud of the job your leader is doing, when your leader shows vision, when your leader has policies that he's able to talk about, you want to make sure that people know and see him. I think when you have a leader with no vision, no policies, no platform, no hope, I think that's probably why you don't see billboards up of the leader of the opposition.
No vote.
There's a thing that the leader of the opposition says a lot, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Sensi's one of them, but that's not what I'm talking about. The one thing that the leader of the opposition says a lot is, it's not about the province doing well, it's about people doing well. So I really don't understand that statement whatsoever. So I think it's different because what I did is, I took a look back at the last session and who did most of the talking for the opposition. And it's very interesting how it broke down. The leader of the opposition, out of the total time allowed for question periods, talked 44.2% of the time. The members from the north, from Athabasca and from Cumberland, the member from Athabasca spoke 3.2% of the time, and the member from Cumberland spoke 0.9% of the time.
They don't care about the north.
They seem like they don't have a high priority in the north, but I think I'm going to help the leader of the opposition out here. I don't think the slogan he's using right now is very correct. I think it should be, it's not about the NDP doing well, it's about the member from Massey Place doing well. Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, I think they may have some issues in that side, especially when it comes to the north, because when I also looked at their throne speech magical wish list, I didn't see very much in their wish list for the north either.
Not even for PA.
Not even from Prince Albert. Not even from Prince Albert. Not for the north. And I think that might be a problem for the member from Cumberland, because I know of a young man who's just recently been nominated in Cumberland for the Saskatchewan party named Thomas Suzuki. And he's the mayor up there, and I think he's a pretty well-liked mayor. So if I was the member from Cumberland, I'd probably go in to talk to my leader right now saying, I might need a little more face time, or there might not be a seat for the member from Cumberland on that side of the house, because it's probably going to be on this side of the house, Mr. Speaker. And I'm probably going to wind up here pretty soon, Mr. Speaker. But well, if you want me to keep going, I can keep going for a while. But I was looking at the NDP's thorough speech list of demands, which I don't know how you have a list of demands when you're in opposition, because it should be, I guess that wants to be the combative words they like to use, but their demands are stop ignoring urgent needs in care facilities for frontline staff, equipment, and repairs. So I would say that last session our government provided $10 million to help the region for specific initiatives and an additional $3.7 million for ongoing programs. This funding will be used to purchase 700 pieces of equipment, hire additional staff, and support staff training. Stop ignoring the $2.2 billion in need of repairs for hospitals and facilities. Well, since 2008, ministries, Crown corporations have spent close to $16 billion on a range of capital projects. This year alone, $3 billion have been committed to renew and expand the province's infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on with their list of demands. And the interesting thing is, I'll get one more in because I really liked it when the member from Mass Place talks about eggs in baskets. So I'll talk about the economy for a little bit.
Absolutely.
Mr. Speaker, he always says we need to diversify. We need to diversify. Well, 577,000 people are working in the province today. That's pretty good. Unemployment's been at a record low in Canada for 23 consecutive years. And to diversify the economy, getting ahead of myself. Mr. Speaker, to diversify the economy, I think one of the biggest points that you could see and look at, one of the biggest pieces of data you can see is where are the jobs being created? Where are the 577,000 more people working? So maybe we should break that down. So over the past 7 years, there have been 70,400 new jobs created in Saskatchewan. And fewer than 10% of those jobs, 66,000 were created in the resource sector. Well, where have they been? Because they seem to think we're relying on the resource sector. Construction, 18,000. Healthcare, 10,700. Resources, 6,600. Science and technology, 6,200. Education, 5,800. Agriculture, 5,300. All other sectors, 17,800 for a grand total of 70,400 new people working in the province. I'm not too sure, but that sounds pretty diversified to me. That doesn't seem like one sector is taking up all the jobs, all the new jobs in the province of Saskatchewan. Yeah, well, as the member from Yorkton said, that sounds like all kinds of eggs in all kinds of baskets. And I think that, Mr. Speaker, that's what happens when you have policies in place. I know I keep going back to policies because one more story about the member from Rosemont, Mr. Speaker. I know that he went and talked to a University of Regina class a couple weeks ago, and the member from Coronation Park was there speaking with him, and the member from Rosemont was going on and on about what the NDP will do when they come back in government and what they would like to do and what they'd like to see. So the member from Coronation Park goes, well, we're all here, and I bet you we all have smartphones. Why don't we jump on the Google, as the member from Nintendo would say, and see what their platform will be and the party's policies are. Then you'll see exactly what they're talking about. That went over like a lead balloon with the member from Regina Rosemont, because when all the students went to look at the NDP's website, nada, nothing. It was very interesting, and it was probably difficult for him to talk his way out of that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So I think at some point in time, and I'm very much looking forward to it, because within the next 18 months, the people of this province are going to have a decision to make. They're going to have to decide on a party, a government that has policies, has vision, has leadership, has a team in place that wants to put Saskatchewan first, and they want to be able to go out on the doorsteps, and we'll be on the doorsteps probably from now for 18 months total, Mr. Speaker. And I think that when we go to the doorsteps, people are very much happy to see a party with ideas. And I don't know, but I am very, very much happy and encouraged when I go to the doorstep and I hear, well, the NDP are here, they don't have much to offer. And I think that that's probably what's going to happen. And I feel pretty sorry for the member from Cumberland when he's going to go door knocking. In last session, they reported in his paper that he asked 4 questions in the whole session, maybe 8. Sorry, it might have been 8 questions. I apologize to the member from Cumberland. I think he got on his feet 8 times, not 4. My bad. But how he's going to go there and go door knocking in Larange and say, hey, I asked probably 12 questions for you guys in the last year. I'm not sure if that's the type of representation they're looking for. And I think that that's going to be replayed a lot for members of the NDP across the province. And I'm very much looking forward to the next 18 months. And I'm probably not going to support the amendment, which confused me to begin with, because well, I won't be supporting the amendment, not probably. I won't be supporting the amendment, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but I will be supporting our government's speech from the throne. I will be supporting the direction our government's going, and I think that we're trying to do the best we can for Saskatchewan, making the priorities that we hear on the doorstep when we're talking to Saskatchewan people, and I think they see those priorities mirrored in what this throne speech brings. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.